Good evening, everyone. Good timing, Terry. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Planning, Transport, Regeneration Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Tuesday, the 17th of October, 7 p.m. First thing on the agenda, do we have any apologies for absence, Kenna?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've received apologies for absence from Councillor Anderson, who's been substituted by Councillor Piccolo, and Councillors Hartstein and Maney have also given their apologies.
Thank you very much, Kenna. Item 2, minutes. Has anyone who's read the minutes got any comments, anything inaccurate in the minutes at all? So, are we okay to go with the minutes? All right, second that, yeah? Good. Mark's lucky that I didn't include in items of urgent business the angry Councillor Massey who I had on the phone complaining about Muckingford Road at the moment. So you're lucky I didn't drag him in here to grill you on that, because he definitely got into my ear a few minutes ago. But apart from the angry Councillor Massey, I don't have any other items of urgent business at the moment. Number 4, declarations of interest. Have we got any declarations of interest this evening? Thank you very much, committee. So, without further ado, we will go on to item 5, which is the Thurrock Scheduled Ancient Monuments Assessment of Settings report for April 2013. Would you like to go ahead?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mark, apologies, I didn't know if you wanted to do a brief introduction on the reports first. No? Okay.
No, thank you, Alec. I'm very happy for you to take the detail. I'm here to support.
Great, thank you. In that case, I'll start then. So the first report is on Thurrock's Scheduled Ancient Monuments, and this is a technical baseline assessment that's been undertaken by our Historic Environment Advisor at Place Services. Now, there are 17 Scheduled Ancient Monuments in Thurrock. These are designated by the Secretary of State. They're not something that Thurrock Council designates or has the power to. However, we do have general duties in terms of conservation of heritage, in which this report helps us in providing an evidence baseline and also helping to inform decisions, both in terms of the emerging local plan and any decisions around developments that may be in close proximity to scheduled ancient monuments. So the report goes through all of the 17 scheduled ancient monuments that are present in the borough. It provides an understanding of the significance of each monument, and that's undertaken based on best practice guidance from Historic England. And it also provides an understanding of the wider setting and the importance of that setting to that monument. So it provides a series of recommendations and comments as to what are the likely implications of development should it come forward within the setting of these monuments, and what can be done to ensure that if development were to come forward within the setting of this, how they could either mitigate any impacts that could occur in that situation. So this report was previously completed, as I said, by Place Services. It has been out for public consultation at the start of last year. It received a few comments, mostly concentrated around Coalhouse Fort, and these were comments linked with questions about public access and the condition of the fort. Some of those questions are outside the scope, really, of this report, which, as I said, purely looks at the assessment of settings of the scheduled monuments and not the condition of the scheduled monuments themselves. Historic England have also been consulted on the report and were complimentary of it and provided a few pointers on management proposals that were added in. And the intention is now to bring it here to this committee for further comment before it goes to Cabinet and hopefully to be adopted and published. As under the National Planning Policy Framework, there's an expectation that any evidence we collect on our historic environment that is used to inform decisions is put out into public, so it forms part of our historic environment records.
Thank you very much. I'm going to go to a similar theme as what I asked you, I think, when you presented your last report, and that is that we may have members of the public watching tonight who would have looked at the headline title and the items mentioned and thought that we were going to be going into detail about a specific, the plans for specific monuments. So if you could just give them some clarity about the the value of this report for them, if you could make it a bit more tangible for them, the value of this report for them, and what the consequences are, potential consequences of not putting together a report like this. I think that would probably make it a bit more tangible to anyone that's watching.
Of course. So I can talk through the contents of the report, and that will help people understand what it sort of covers. For each of the scheduled monuments, there is an assessment that looks at the broad history of the monuments. It explains why it's important, as an example of a scheduled monument. It also undertakes an assessment as to the rarity and integrity of these monuments. And of course, some of them in Thurrock are really quite rare nationally, and so it's very useful background information to explaining why it's so important as a historic and heritage asset. It helps explain a lot of the stories behind some of these monuments. At the same time, it also helps to understand the experience of the asset by looking at where it's likely to be viewed from public rights of way and other areas, which is an important aspect of understanding the wider setting of it. So it goes into quite a lot of detail, not just in terms of the desktop study of what do we know about these monuments from historical records, but the historic environment advisors have been on site and explored where is it that this monument can actually be experienced, taking into account that a lot of these are on private ownership, so they're not all publicly accessible. So it also provides that visual information to the communities where previously people might not have been aware that we had these scheduled ancient monuments, which are a really important aspects of Thurrock's heritage assets. So it really covers all of that. And then in terms of the management proposals and recommendations in relationship to development, obviously the Lower Thames Crossing is a very important focus for this document. So for each of the scheduled ancient monuments, it outlines what the likely potential impacts that Lower Thames Crossing could have on the setting of some of these. And of course, on some of the scheduled ancient monuments, it's quite severe, including the Orset crop marks, where the Lower Thames Crossing is expected to go directly over the scheduled ancient monument. So it provides some additional information about that. So really it helps to bring to light to the communities, but also to members making decisions at planning, but also as part of the local plan process. A lot of the stories behind the scheduled ancient monuments explains why they're important and what we need to do to make sure that we're protecting them moving forward, not just in the local plan process, but through the decision-making around planning applications coming forward that may impact on them.
Brilliant. And this informs the local plan exactly how, if you could give an example of, just if you could give a hypothetical example of what sort of decision wouldn't be taken in the local plan off the back of this.
So as part of the local plan, obviously a very important part of that is looking at potential site allocations that may come forwards. Now, some of these may be in a situation where they could be considered to impact the setting of a scheduled ancient monument, and it may not necessarily be that they're building or proposing to build immediately adjacent to a scheduled monument. It may be in the middle or longer distant views in which the visual presentation of the monument, say for example, Coalhouse Fort or Tilbury Fort, their position on the river means that the skyline behind them is quite significant to their setting. So it helps provide advice as to where allocations coming forwards are appropriate, but also when it gets into the more detailed understanding of what needs to come forward as part of those allocations under the Regulation 19 local plan, which will be coming after the initial proposals, Regulation 18 local plan, which will deal in a lot more detail on those allocations. It will help to define principles to ensure that if development is coming forwards in the setting of these ancient monuments, it's doing so in a way that doesn't create any adverse impacts.
Last point for me, and then I'll go to the rest of the committee. Why are there no churches within, like, why not all the old churches? Obviously, we've got a very old church in Ockenden that's got, and we've got a very old church in Aveley, two wards that I represented. Why are they not included within these?
Thank you. So the scheduled ancient monuments, as a sort of designation, they're traditionally applied to archaeological aspects. So things such as churches or built heritage, they're normally protected under listing. So it offers a very similar amount of protection to these. So it's just the case of not having to duplicate over. However, there's different sort of consenting regimes between scheduled ancient monuments and listed buildings. So scheduled ancient monuments, any works to do with them, you'll need to get consent from the Secretary of State. Whereas listed buildings, that will be listed building consent, that's determined by the local planning authority, that is Thurrock. And of course, we'll take consultation from Historic England and the Historic Environment Advisor when it comes to that. So.
Thank you very much for those answers. Would anyone like to speak?
Yeah, just very
Councillor
briefly, very well put together document, and I'm sure there'll be more comments as well. Obviously, you mentioned about, this being about the protection of the assets, not so much the upkeep, but obviously I think the importance of the document does show how important they are, and certainly I can see why there's been a lot of comments on Coalhouse Fort. So obviously going forward, once hopefully this is sent to Cabinet, it is acknowledged their importance, and hopefully that should breathe some life into the maintenance. And I know Coalhouse Fort is one of our major ones. It's so important that it is upkept for the future, but I do appreciate it's also, not effectively part of this report. The report itself does show its importance, so not so much a question, just more of a sort of, how important it is that we upkeep these. Thank you.
Councillor Watson.
Alec, really like this report. Sat and read it all. We were just talking about it before this meeting started. Really surprised how much historic land we've actually got. One of the questions I want to ask you though is about the upkeep of all of these. Now these are the assets of Thurrock. So there's a lot sitting in Purfleet, like there is a lot sitting in Alsett. Reading Alsett, I'm surprised it isn't a significant interest in its own right, Alsett, the whole entire village, to be frank with you. How is this being maintained? Because the Dovecot seriously needs a little bit of TLC to it. Proof House has already got somebody in it, but I'm just interested to see how we're going to keep it to maintain this as it is. And I can fully appreciate the local plan about how it all joins together. That's why it's all coming together at the same time, and I completely understand all of that. But I am slightly worried about we need to maintain these, and I'm not quite sure how we're going to be doing that.
Thank you. So I think it's worth pointing out that a lot of the scheduled ancient monuments are in private ownership, so we have little control over the maintenance regime that will be involved in that. I believe 4 scheduled ancient monuments sit either wholly or partly within Thurrock ownership, and that is Coalhouse Fort, Dean Holes, parts of the Alsett crop marks, and the Purfleet magazine. And questions about how they're sort of maintained. As you said, they're not contained within this report or scope. So there's all sorts of ways in which the further maintenance of them could be taken forward. For instance, I understand the Purfleet magazine, it sits within the conservation area. And as part of a conservation area management plan, it may begin to better articulate how we ensure that these scheduled monuments are being properly maintained, and also providing the potential for highlighting the interpretation of these monuments as well. In the case of somewhere like Coalhouse Fort, obviously there's a conservation management plan that existed between 2013 to 2016, which I understand is in the process of being refreshed as part of a feasibility study. It's being part funded by National Highways as well. So again, a conservation management plan might be another appropriate tool in which we can move forward to ensure that monuments are maintained. I wouldn't say there's not a single answer to all of these things. There's a range of tools that could be applied as and when appropriate, and reliance on council resources, of course.
Anyone else? No, thank you very much for that. Really appreciated. And the recommendations are, so I'm on the wrong page. I was on the next report, sorry. The recommendations are that the Planning, Transport and Regeneration Overview and Scrutiny Committee note and provide comment on the Thurrock Scheduled Ancient Monuments Assessment and Settings report. So I'm happy to note that. I'm sure everyone else is as well, yeah? Brilliant. So, yeah, we'll move on to our next report, which is the East Tilbury Barter Village and Coronum Conservation Areas Character Appraisal and Management Plans, April 2023. And actually, I think I missed, sorry, I do apologise. I had a piece of paper thrown at me and I ignored it anyway. Did you have a comment to make, Mark?
I was just going to add to Alex's response to Councillor Watson. He covered the point that we've managed to secure some funding towards a plan for the Coalhouse Fort from National Highways under the Lower Thames Crossing. There is also the potential of funding from that same source to implement any actions from the plan. So we'll be working on that and bringing that forward, and I'm happy to share that with the committee. Councillor Watson mentioned the Dovecot. The Dovecot, whilst it is owned by the council, it sits with the trust for High House. And one of the things that both myself and the Chief Executive are looking to do with the trustees is to ensure that there is a robust business plan for High House, which includes ongoing maintenance. So we'll be working on that, and again, I'd be happy to bring that back in due course to this committee.
Yeah, apologies for that. If you'd like to proceed then on item 6.
Great, thank you, Chair. So the last report is on 2 conservation area management plans, one for the East Tilbury Barter Village and one for Corringham. Now, Thurrock has 7 conservation areas, and these can be designated by the local planning authority. That's within our power under the Planning Listed Buildings and Conservation Area Act. Both the East Tilbury and the Corringham character appraisal were previously adopted in 2007, so they're quite significantly out of date at this point. So this is why 2 updates have been undertaken, since as part of the statutory duties the council has under the acts I just mentioned is that we need to refresh from time to time our conservation area management plans. So again, both of these reports have been prepared by our historic environment advisors at Place Services, and they both went out for public consultation at the end of last year on the subjects within them. I think it's fair to say that both of these conservation area management plans signify an enrichment on the previous conservation area management plan, and that is due to a lot more information being publicly available, particularly around East Tilbury. Historic England produced a historic area appraisal in 2007, which really brought to light a lot of the history and significance of the Barter buildings. Several of the Barter factory buildings have also been listed since the last conservation area management plan has been put in place, and of course there's been development in East Tilbury, both Barter Mews and the development on the Barter tennis courts, former tennis courts. So in order to incorporate all of this, this is why that conservation area management plan has been produced, and bearing in mind there's a live planning application as well around the former Barter factory. There was no proposed changes to the boundary of the conservation area in East Tilbury. It was maintained as it is. For Corringham, there was very minor amendments to the boundary proposed so that it better follows physical features in the area rather than arbitrary lines. So it better follows ditches and a field boundary, which wasn't previously captured in the last conservation area management plan. In terms of the consultation responses, there was quite a few that came through asking about greater detail, particularly in East Tilbury, about the potential for further listing of buildings. So I'll just point out that in terms of listing, that's not something that the local planning authority can do ourselves. It's something that the Secretary of State does under guidance from Historic England. Anyone can suggest a building for listing to Historic England, who will assess it accordingly and make a decision and recommendation on that. And in terms of Corringham, there was only one comment actually in the consultation that looked at whether it could be extended north. But in reviewing of that comment and the significance of that conservation area and why it was designated in the first place, we felt it was inappropriate to amend the boundary further, because the Corringham conservation area is really trying to capture what is a very compact medieval village centre on the marshes. And the comment was referring to slightly newer, relatively newer buildings further north, which were still historic but didn't have the same significance. So it was felt that, although the comment raised some very interesting points on what could be included in future local lists of non-designated heritage buildings, it wasn't appropriate to trigger a change in the boundary of that. So following this, we've brought these 2 conservation area management plans that have been updated following consultation to committee for note and comment, and the intention is therefore then to go to Cabinet to ensure that these could be adopted and have a force in helping to inform planning decisions that may come forward in the area.
I won't mention the top secret plans that I've seen so far on the local plan, which we're not allowed to mention because they're official sensitive. So if I refer back to the previous document that went before council, both of those documents I mean, that document suggested a significant extra amount of development in both of these areas. If those developments do occur, how are we going to protect these two areas? What are the main ideas for protecting these two, and the main vision for these two areas with that level of development?
So a key aspect of conservation area management plans is that they help to identify what makes a particular area unique in terms of the details or the types of built form or other types of pattern of development that already exist there. So while it's not used as an instrument to arbitrarily block development coming forwards, it's very important and useful baseline for informing, say, design coding that would accompany a large-scale development application, for instance, to ensure that any development that comes forward, it takes the cues from the conservation area and doesn't create an adverse or negative impact within it. This is very different to development within a conservation area. It should be noted that our conservation areas in Thurrock aren't covered with an Article 4 direction, which is something that is traditionally associated with a conservation area, which would remove permitted development rights. We don't have that, but even without that, the designation of a conservation area does bring some extra protections in there, including around tree felling or any changes to fences that would require additional permissions that wouldn't necessarily happening. So there's two different discussions there. Development within the conservation area would obviously have to be decided with the conservation area management plan in mind to make sure that it isn't having an adverse impact on the character and significance and importance. And development outside that conservation area, of course, these updated camps provide that additional information around the significance of the setting to the heritage and gives a lot of cues as to what could be picked up from the important and unique aspects of the conservation area to ensure that the design of any development around there would be more sympathetic and sensitive to a lot of the issues that have been raised.
Does anyone else have any comments? Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Alec, again for a good report. Really like it. Conservation areas are a bit of a thing for me. Is an Article 4 been put on this conservation area?
So we don't have Article 4s in any of our conservation areas.
Maybe we should, because the whole point of Article 4 is to stop development within that conservation area, so it doesn't look out of place. And we've got that in other parts of the borough, where there's a conservation area in place, and then they've just gone, the resident has just gone to decided to, I don't know, put a drive in, or build walls all over the place. And we've got nothing to stop that. And we've got a whole massive conservation area up in East Tilbury that needs to be protected. It's a bit, for me, it's a bit like if you go up north, you know, and it's in English heritage land, you don't go and slap in like the normal PVC windows. You have to, whatever they say. And I think, why can't we do something similar to that into conservation areas, especially on somewhere like East Tilbury or any of the other major players like Alsett and places like that?
So I'll point out that, yes, an Article 4 direction is something that's within the power of the local planning authority to put in place. It doesn't prevent development in these areas, I would say. It just removes permitted development rights. So it would mean that things that didn't previously need a planning application would now need a planning application to be enacted. So it simply brings in a lot of things into the planning system that previously would have, as you said, could have been done without any permission. I would note that Article 4 directions have been mentioned within the management plans of both of these conservation area management plans that have been presented as a proposal as part of it, so something to be considered. And the consultation response from Historic England also provided some insight into best practice currently occurring in other conservation areas where they've introduced an Article 4 direction, but they've also introduced a local development order. Obviously not to the same scale as to what's happening at London Gateway, but it provides a sense where, yes, it's taking away permitted development rights for certain things, but if you want to, say, do your windows in a particular way, the local development order means that you would not require permission if you were to, say, I don't know, use crystal windows where it would be appropriate and it's an important part of the conservation area. So there's options within that as well to consider how we can, as you say, help prevent incremental damage to these places, but also ensure that we're not adding that additional burden to applicants in the area when they're trying to do the right thing to restore the heritage significance of the conservation area.
I think I just want to protect the conservation area properly and not have like piecemeal bits put onto it. It's a conservation area for that reason. It's because it's iconic for that particular area as well. So can we just try and whatever needs to be to protect our conservation areas within this borough? That'd be fantastic. Thank you.
Any other comments? No? Oh, Mark, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Councillor Watson and say I'll be very happy to discuss this in our next shadow portfolio holder briefing, and also to discuss it with the portfolio holder to understand his views on the report and your suggestions. So I'll be very happy to take that and discuss it outside the meeting.
Brilliant. So that's the presentation and questions done. So we'll just move to the recommendation. There's just one recommendation, that the Planning, Transport and Regeneration Overview and Scrutiny Committee notes and comments on the East Tilbury Barter Village Conservation Area Character Appraisal and Management Plan and the Coronham Conservation Area Character Appraisal and Management Plan. Noted? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Piccolo.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I'm really pleased that the depth that the reports have gone into. I mean, it's already been mentioned by my colleagues, but I'll actually be keeping these documents because I think they're a very good reference point and also a bit of a historical record to look back on. So, yeah, really pleased with the quality of the reports.
Thank you very much. So when I read this, I did think that perhaps at the next meeting there was room for the extraordinary meeting. If we could have a briefing note on Coalhouse Fault, that would be probably. I think there's something that no one in the committee would be against. I understand with the BVI report that's going to include. I mean, within that that's quite a large item, obviously, because the BVI report makes specific case studies. So I know that's a multi-layered item. So that would explain the absence of certain projects within that, because it will all fall within that. So was there anything else that any member thought that we should add to the work programme as it stands? Councillor Watson.
Would we have anything come back on Stamford Hope Station? Because I don't really want to take our eye off of that, to be honest with you. Yes? Mark?
Mark?
Yeah, I'm happy to schedule that for, I would suggest early in the new year. I mean, we don't have a meeting until February. I could bring it back in December, but either of those meetings, there'll obviously be more progress by February, but if members are concerned that they want to see regular updates, we can have a short update in December.
So, sorry, Chair, so for my mark, the Schlepp funding was going to be moved from Gray's Underpath to Stamford Le Hope, but you needed to go and get permission for that to happen with CLEP?
Yep.
So will you have that permission by November, or would you have that permission? It'd be better to go in December with a full report. I think the committee needs to know that we're comfortable this is actually moving in the right direction now.
There won't be a formal CLEP decision until their February meeting, but I'm certainly happy to give you updates at the meeting if the chair is happy for it to be a sort of standing item for a very short briefing note or verbal update, I'm happy to do that. I'm not sure there'll be enough, certainly in November, for a written report, but I'm aware from the last meeting that members will want regular updates. My view would be that perhaps we schedule those on a quarterly basis, but with any notable changes or update done verbally at the meeting.
I'm happy for verbally as long as there's questions as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry. So yeah. Oh, Councillor Kelly.
Just briefly, east-facing slips. I know obviously it's been a real issue at Lakeside and Purfleet area. We do discuss this sort of every sort of maybe 6 months to a year. I wondered whether something could go on, maybe for January time, just to see where we was, the business case update. We know it's vitally needed. It's just I'm quite nervous at the amount of cutbacks there has been from government funding in terms of much-needed projects. So I just wondered if we could have maybe an update in the new year. Thank you.
I'm not opposed to that. As someone that travels that bit of road on a daily basis, it is one of the worst bits of planning that you could possibly imagine. So yeah, if you could provide that update for members, that would be fantastic as well. Brilliant. Anything else? Well, that concludes the business of the meeting. So thank you, members, and thank you for officers on some really interesting reports that one of our members is going to be keeping as a souvenir. So you don't get any higher praise than that, do you? So well done. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to join virtually on this occasion.
Oh, no, not a problem at all. It's 2023, isn't it? Thanks very much.